mindset, we're a leader, yet we're importing everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, the IRA speaks to the Made in America component. And I would like to challenge it even further. And I think Governor Hochul supports this in some of her agenda. And New York legislators are in favor of bringing New York, creating New York jobs for New Yorkers in the EV space. So yes, we have the mindset. We're committed to climate change in the state of New York. But I think where the other problem lies for New York is, where are the EV jobs? Why aren't we leading the market in EV job creation? And I think that's where Green Island EV comes in.
Welcome to Stream, a trucktractortrailer.com production. My name is Zach Miller. I'm your host, and we have a really special conversation here today. We have Franz Hochstrasser from Raise Green, and John Gilley, who is the founder of Green Island EV Company, talking about what's been in the news so much the last 6 months. First and foremost, we have the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, and then just very recently, we have the Inflation Reduction Act. These are two major pieces of legislation that have passed at the federal level here this year, particularly related to climate, sustainability, and job creation, and sort of the flywheel of the three of those. So, who better to talk about these than Franz, who has a wealth of experience after working with the federal government on climate and environmental policy. So Franz, if you could please just give us a brief overview about the climate portions of these bills and what they mean, for American jobs and manufacturing.
Sure, delighted to, and thanks so much for having me on, Zach, and good to see you, John. So the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that passed in December of last year put forward an enormous package of funding for clean energy, and particularly electric vehicles, which I think is topic for today. Specifically within that, there is a provision, a $5 billion incentive program for clean school buses. And school buses, as you guys know better than I do, there are about 500,000 of those in the country. This program specifically incentivizes states as well as private entities to transition those into electric school buses or clean school buses, and that's a very powerful signal to get those moving. But what happened most recently, and what we are just over the moon about, is the largest climate investment in history through the Inflation Reduction Act. So $370 billion will go into climate and clean energy and environmental justice provisions, as well as climate resilience over the next 10 or so years. And within that, there's a whole boatload of incentives specifically for electric vehicles as well. So really excited to dig into those and talk about them. This really resets the table for business and private investment into particularly transportation, electrification, but also the entire clean energy economy, and accelerates that transition to the tune of setting the U.S. on pace to reduce emissions by an estimated 40% below 2005 levels by 2030. So well on our way to the 50% that is the U.S. target. And it's really going to take all of us in order to get there, implementing these programs and deploying more and more EVs, homemade, American-made EVs, and clean energy technologies all across the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And what just another great time to have this conversation is we're in back to school season right now. So when better to talk about school buses than back to school season? And John, I know you know the school bus industry better than most people, but correct me if I'm wrong, a majority of school buses on the road actually are in the state of New York. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I think that 1 out of 11 school buses on planet Earth are in New York State. So Franz mentioned that there's about 500,000, and that's really in North America. Governor Hochul, governor of New York, came out recently, and others that are in the industry here in New York. They mentioned 50,000 school buses in New York. I think the number is about 45,000, but there's 5,000 what we would call as on reserve or in service, but not deployed yet. But there's about 50,000. So the number I like to speak to is 45,000 in New York versus a market size of 500. So yeah, Zach, I would say New York State on its own represents a very meaningful market opportunity for school bus manufacturers.
Yeah, absolutely. But then that ties into one of the problems we have, where New York State, as anybody, whatever people may or may not think about these bills, New York State positions itself as a climate leader. Yes. And yet we have more diesel school buses on the road than any other state. So how do you reconcile the fact that, hey, we're New York, we're a climate leader, but also we have more diesel school buses than anywhere else on the planet?
Well, let's cut New York some slack. You could go, with the exception of California, which has really took the first leap into EV. And of course, I was privileged enough to be led the project that put the first 5 electric school buses in the state of New York. That was the White Plains demonstration project. And it wasn't just myself and a small team. It takes a village, so to speak, to pull these things off in White Plains. But New York is ready to address the problem. And it is a problem, but we're ready to address it. The bigger problem for a New Yorker is, all right, we're in mindset, we're a leader, yet we're importing everything. And I think, the IRA speaks to the Made in America component. And I would like to challenge it even further. And I think Governor Hochul supports this. And New York legislators are in favor of bringing New York, creating New York jobs for New Yorkers in the EV space. So yes, we have the mindset. We're committed to climate change in the state of New York. But I think where the other problem lies for New York is, where are the EV jobs? Why aren't we leading the market in EV job creation? And I think that's where Green Island EV comes in, is to be that OEM that's headquartered in New York, that's actually manufacturing in New York for New Yorkers to solve some of those job problems that we have on the manufacturing side. And these are blue collar trades jobs that every state in the nation wants to create. But specifically for the problem we're trying to solve here in Green Island is the problem right here in New York.
And it's interesting, and it really is a perfect solution to that. And Franz, is quickly going back to you, because I believe that some of the international manufacturers actually pushed back against the IRA specifically for that purpose, because it is designed to back American manufacturers in the green space and not to really give out subsidies to some of these international companies.
Yeah, well, so we have a major critical materials challenge ahead of us, and that is that we import the bulk of our critical materials from other countries, primarily China. There's about a 4-to-1 trade imbalance right now. And that sets American companies back in terms of competitiveness. But what this bill does that is truly revolutionary and thoroughly exciting, I think, for the entire American economy, but especially for clean energy and climate companies, is that it kind of resets the balance there by really incentivizing and at a certain point, phasing in a demand for U.S.-made components on most of the clean energy technologies that we need to deploy. So that includes, within the electric vehicle tax credits, a domestic made components requirement that phases in over time. And that's going to lead to a whole ton of innovation to meet those and new manufacturing. And you all really are on the cutting edge of delivering on that. And we need companies like that out front, ready to take on the challenge of reinventing manufacturing, reinventing the blue collar workforce here in America around the clean energy transition.
Absolutely. John, somebody wants to invest in Green Island EV. How would they go about doing that?
Well, go to raisegreen.com and look for Green Island EV and press the invest button, and we'll walk you through the process. And that's Franz's company, by the way, which is an awesome group of folks we've worked with. And by the way, Zach, the reason Green Island EV, our company, we had many choices for crowdfunding solutions, and by far the only one that was all in on, they're on a climate agenda, a climate solution agenda, was Raise Green. So it was without a doubt, really was an easy choice for us to partner up with Raise Green to, let's say, take Green Island EV to market.
Awesome. Thank you guys for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Zach.
Thank you both. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Franz.
Thanks.